Every summer, my cousins and I head to Yosemite National Park for a camping trip. One of our traditions is spending a night stargazing. Near our campsite, there's a small village with shops and eateries. Just across the road, a vast field of tall grass stretches out, with a narrow boardwalk winding through it, like a dock extending into a bay, but surrounded by dense forest instead of water. That's where we usually settle to watch the stars. One evening, the sky was too cloudy for stargazing, so we just sat and talked. Then one of my cousins spotted a strange light deep in the woods, bright and motionless. It was odd, because there were no camps or buildings in that direction, and it was late at night. Curious, we moved along the boardwalk for a closer look. The light flickered like a flame, which was against park rules unless in a designated fire pit. The source seemed far into the woods because no matter how close we got, it remained hazy. Then we heard noises, first like a rowdy gathering, then shifting into eerie, synchronized chanting. The voices grew deeper, almost pained, turning into guttural howls. It was unsettling. When I turned around, my cousins had backed away, huddled together, staring into the trees. Whatever was being out there, it wasn't a normal party. The next day, we explored the area where we'd seen the light. The woods were empty, no camps, no cabins. The only sign of anyone being there was a patch of disturbed ground covered in bare footprints. To this day, I wonder if we stumbled upon something far stranger than we realized. Years later, I lived with my family in a desert town near Joshua Tree National Park. Our house sat on an unpaved road with no streetlights, making nights pitch black. One February, strange things started happening. Late at night, noises came from outside my window, rustling, even what sounded like a phone ringing. My boyfriend once saw someone running away from our house. Then the rocks started, small ones at first, tossed from the darkness. One night, a golf ball-sized rock struck my boyfriend, then bounced and hit me. We told the others, and as we spoke, more rocks rained against the house. The next night, it happened again. Armed with makeshift weapons, my boyfriend and my mom's partner went out to investigate, taking our fearless German Shepherd mix with them. After half an hour, I heard a crash at the front door. Our dog, who had never been afraid of anything, had slammed into it so hard his paw slipped underneath. When I opened the door, he was trembling, tail between his legs. Whatever he saw out there terrified him. The man returned empty-handed, and as soon as they came inside, the rock has started again. We called the police, but they dismissed it as a prank. The rocks continued sporadically for nights, stopping only when someone was outside searching. One evening, the men sat on the porch, drinking and shouting threats into the darkness. Things took a dark turn when my boyfriend suddenly ran into the desert, returning minutes later with cactus spines stuck in his leg. He claimed he chased a figure in black before falling into a bush. After that night, the rocks stopped. We never found out who or what was out there. On our 10th anniversary, my husband and I went camping in a nearby national park. It was late September, chilly but beautiful. We set up near a small lake, with another campsite visible across the water. Earlier, we'd passed a lone camper there, a man who stared silently as we greeted him. That night, our dog suddenly went wild, barking at something in the woods. My husband investigated and found the same man lying motionless on the ground. When we called out, he stood abruptly, acting strangely. He sat by our fire without speaking, repeatedly checking his pocket as if confirming something was there. His behavior was unsettling, especially when he kept eyeing our dog and his knife. After half an hour, he left without explanation. We decided to pack up immediately. As we loaded the car, a flashlight flickered from the direction of his camp. We drove off, relieved to be away from him. During a road trip through California, my partner and I stopped at Death Valley for a hike to a waterfall. The trail felt off from the start, like we were being watched. though we saw no one. At the trailhead, a black SUV with tinted windows was parked nearby, empty. As we loaded our car, a massive man emerged silently from the bushes. He carried a rifle and a hunting knife, claiming he'd found a phone. We checked ours. Both were accounted for. Without hesitation, we sped away. The thought of him stalking us unseen still haunts me. Years ago, my wife and I stayed at a secluded lodge near Kruger National Park. Only 2 units were occupied that weekend, and a manager left, leaving us alone. Returning from a day out, I noticed fresh boot prints leading to our chalet. That evening, an overwhelming sense of dread hit us both. My wife insisted we leave immediately. We packed in a hurry and drove off. The next day, the manager called in a panic. The lodge had been ransacked by armed men just minutes after we left. Our chalet had been targeted. We learned to always trust our instincts. That decision might have saved our lives. The eerie feeling of being watched never fully left us after that trip. Even years later, the memory of those boot prints outside our chalet sends a chill down my spine. We often wonder, had we ignored that gut feeling, would we have been there when those men broke in? It made me realize how quickly a peaceful getaway can turn sinister. The wilderness, as beautiful as it is, has a way of reminding you that you're not always alone out there. Whether it's something unexplained in the woods, unseen figures in the desert, or the unsettling presence of a stranger, those moments stay with you. Since then, we've been more cautious, always locking doors, keeping a light on at night, and never dismissing that nagging sense of unease. Because sometimes, the scariest things aren't the ones you see, but the ones you almost didn't. The desert has a way of playing tricks on the mind. Whispers in the wind, shadows stretching too long in the moonlight. After that night with the rocks, I started noticing other things. Our German shepherd would sometimes wake in the middle of the night, ears pricked toward the darkness, a low growl rumbling in his chest. He'd stare at nothing, hackles raised, as if watching something move just beyond the edge of our porch light. One evening, months after the rock throwing stopped, I stepped outside to find a perfect circle of stones arranged in the dirt near our front door. Small, smooth pebbles, the kind you'd find in a dry creek bed, placed with deliberate precision. The nearest creek was miles away. My boyfriend swore he hadn't done it, and our dog refused to go near the spot for days. We never saw anyone out there again, but sometimes, when the wind was just right, I'd catch the faintest scent of wood smoke drifting across the desert, even though there hadn't been a fire for miles. Maybe it was all just coincidence. Maybe the desert is full of things we'll never understand. Or maybe, out there, in the vast, empty dark, something was always watching, waiting to see if we'd notice it again. Either way, I still don't walk outside alone at night. Some lessons, once learned, aren't easily forgotten. Years passed, but the desert never fully let go of its grip on me. Even after moving to the city, I'd sometimes wake in the dead of night, convinced I heard the faint clatter of pebbles against glass. My husband would find me at the window, staring into the darkness of our suburban backyard, searching for shapes that didn't belong. Last summer, we took our kids camping in Joshua Tree for the first time. I thought enough time had passed that the desert and I had made our peace. But when my daughter came running back to camp one evening, breathless, saying she'd seen a man made of shadows standing between the boulders, my blood turned to ice. The rangers found nothing, of course, just wind-carved rock and the play of moonlight. But that night, as I lay awake listening to the desert silence, I realized some places keep their secrets forever, and maybe that's for the best. Now, when we visit, we stay closer to town. Some mysteries aren't meant to be solved. They're just reminders that the world is stranger than we know. And sometimes, that's enough. The desert has a way of getting under your skin, lingering in your bones, like the fine grit of sand that never quite washes away. Even now, when I close my eyes at night, I can still feel that vast emptiness pressing in, The way the cold creeps up through the desert floor after sunset. The howl of wind through canyon walls that sounds almost like voices. I took my family back to Joshua Tree last spring, determined to make new memories to overwrite the old ones. We stayed at a crowded campground this time, surrounded by laughing families and the comforting glow of other people's campfire. But on our last night, as I sat alone watching the embers die, I caught movement at the edge of the firelight. Just a flicker, maybe a coyote, maybe nothing at all. Yet, when I shone my flashlight, the beam caught something that shouldn't have been there. A single, smooth stone placed neatly atop a flat rock, still damp with dew in the dry desert air. My husband joked it was probably left by some hiker, but we both knew no trails ran near our site. That night, I dreamt of footsteps circling our tent, slow and deliberate. When I woke at dawn, the stone was gone. Perhaps the desert never really lets go of those who've wandered into its mysteries. Or perhaps we're all just haunted by the things we can't explain. Either way, I've learned to listen when that old prickle of unease creeps up my spine. Some places remember you long after you've left them behind. The desert keeps its own time, its own rules. Last winter, I received a faded postcard in the mail with no return address, just a blurry photo of Joshua Tree at dusk and 3 words written in shaky script. You were watched. The postmark was smudged beyond recognition. My husband insists it was just some prank, but I can't shake the feeling that the desert finally found a way to reach back across the years. Sometimes now, when I'm alone in the house, the phone will ring with nothing but static on the line. And twice this month, I've woken to find the faint outline of dusty footprints beneath our bedroom window, though the ground outside remains undisturbed. Maybe these are just coincidences. Maybe not. But I've started keeping a glass jar by the back door filled with smooth desert stones, a collection that seems to grow when I'm not looking. The other day, my youngest daughter asked why I always check it before bed. I didn't tell her about the time I found 1 stone too many, its surface still warm to the touch. Some doors, once opened, can't be fully closed again. The desert remembers, and sometimes I think it's still waiting. The jar of stones sits on my dresser now, its contents shifting in ways I can't explain. Last Tuesday, I woke to find them arranged in that same perfect circle, just like the one that appeared outside our desert home years ago. When I tried to rearrange them, my fingers came away smelling faintly of wood smoke and sage. My daughter claims she saw the shadow man in our backyard last week, a dark silhouette standing perfectly still by the oak tree. By the time I reached the window, there was nothing there, just the moonlight painting silver patterns across the grass. But the next morning, we found a single new stone by the back steps, still damp with dew, though it hadn't rained in weeks. The psychologist I consulted called it projected trauma. The local historian suggested it might be tied to old desert folklore, stories about the stone men who supposedly wander the wastelands, collecting witnesses for some unknown purpose. Neither explanation sits quite right. Last night, the phone rang at 3:17 a.m. When I answered, all I heard was the distant sound of wind through canyon walls, and what might have been whispering, just below the threshold of understanding. The caller ID simply read Joshua. I'm starting to think the desert doesn't just remember, it follows. And whatever's been watching us all these years isn't done yet. The stones keep multiplying, the shadows grow more persistent, and sometimes just before dawn, I swear I can hear the faint clatter of pebbles against glass. The stones have started appearing in other places now. One turned up in my coat pocket last. Tuesday's still warm like it had been baking in the desert sun. Yesterday, my daughter came home from school with a smooth black pebble in her lunchbox. She swore she didn't put it there. The psychologist suggested we move. Environmental triggers, she called them. But deep down, I know distance won't matter. These stones aren't following a map. They're following something far older. Last full moon, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror at 3 a.m. and saw something move behind me. A dark shape where no shadow should have been. When I turned, there was nothing, just the faint scent of creosote and dry earth. The jar is nearly full now. Sometimes, when the house is quiet, I hear the stones clicking together like teeth. My husband still pretends not to notice, but I see how he checks the locks twice these days. I've started dreaming in sandstone and moonlight. In these dreams, something waits at the edge of a dry wash, its outline shifting like heat haze. It never speaks. It never needs to. The desert never really lets go. It just bides its time. The clicking in the jar has grown louder lately. A dry, insistent rhythm that seems to sync with my pulse when the house falls silent. Last night, I woke to find it empty. The stones scattered across the floor in a spiral pattern leading to my daughter's bedroom door. Her sheets were damp with desert dew. A park ranger called yesterday about an abandoned campsite near Joshua Tree. My old driver's license was found tucked beneath a flat rock at the center of a stone circle. The photo had faded strangely, my features blurred as if seen through heat waves. "Funny thing," he said. The site hadn't been used in years, but the ashes in the fire ring were still warm. My husband found the first stone in his shoe this morning. My daughter's teacher sent a note about the invisible friend who leaves pebbles on her desk, a friend who only appears when the classroom windows rattle with dry desert wind. The mirror in our hallway now reflects things a heartbeat too late. Sometimes I catch glimpses of something standing just behind me, not a shadow, but the absence of light. Shaped like a man, it's learning our routines. I've started keeping a flashlight by the bed, not to see better in the dark, but because the batteries always die at exactly 3:17 IEing. That's when the stones in the jar begin to hum. The desert doesn't want us anymore. It wants what we've become. And I fear, we're almost ready. The stones have begun whispering now, not in words, but in the way they shift against each other in the jar, like old bones settling in a shallow grave. My daughter hums along with them sometimes, a tuneless melody that raises the hair on my arms. When I ask where she learned it, she just smiles and says, "The Shadow Man taught me." Last Thursday, I found our dog standing rigid in the backyard at midnight, staring at something only he could. See, by morning his water bowl was full of sand and tiny pebbles. He hasn't barked since. The mirror in the hallway has developed a crack, not from top to bottom, but spreading outward in a perfect spiral. When I tried to wipe the glass clean yesterday, my reflection stayed blurred for a full minute after I stepped away. A letter arrived this morning with no postmark. Inside was a single photograph. Our old campsite in Joshua Tree, the fire pit still smoldering. In the background, barely visible between the boulders, stands a figure with too many shadows. Written on the back in shaky handwriting, "You should have stayed for the sunrise." I've started sleeping with the lights on. It doesn't help. The darkness just pools thicker in the corners now, gathering itself like a patient hunter. And the stones keep counting down to something. We could leave, pack up and drive as far as the ocean will let us, but I know, in that deep, quiet place where truth settles, that it's far too late for running. The desert doesn't chase, it simply waits for you to realize you were always meant to return. Tonight, at 3:17 a.m., I'll wake to the sound of the jar unscrewing itself. The stones will roll across the floor in perfect formation, and from the hallways something will whisper my name, in a voice made of wind and forgotten footsteps. I wonder if the Shadow Man will finally step into tea, a light, or if he'll simply let me see what I've become in the dark. The stones have started leaving on their own now. I'll find one missing from the jar in the morning, only to discover it days later in the freezer or tucked inside my pillowcase, always warmer than it should be. My daughter has begun sleepwalking, her small feet leaving gritty footprints that lead to the back door but never return. The crack in the hallway mirror has spread to the walls, fine lines creeping through the plaster in that same unnatural spiral pattern. Yesterday, I caught my reflection, winking at me, with eyes that weren't mine. When I smashed the glass, the shards bled warm sand onto the floorboards. Our dog has started growing thinner, his ribs showing through his fur no matter how much we feed him. At night, his whines sound disturbingly human. The vet found nothing wrong, except for the fine desert sand packed beneath his eyelids. A package arrived yesterday containing our old camping gear, reeking of wood smoke, though we'd burned it years ago. The tent was folded wrong, inside out, and stained with something dark that flaked away like ancient charcoal. My husband tried to throw it out, but this morning it was back in our closet, the zippers whispering in a language that makes my teeth ache. I've started seeing the shadow man in daylight now, just glimpses at first. A dark shape at the edge of my vision that disappears and I turn. But yesterday, he stayed, just stood at the end of our street as the school bus passed, his outline shimmering like a heat mirage. The children didn't seem to notice him, except my daughter, who waved. The stones in the jar have arranged themselves into a new pattern, one that matches the cracks in our walls. I think they're making a map, or maybe an invitation. Tonight, when the digital clocks blink to 3:17, I won't pretend to sleep. I'll sit at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee gone cold and watch the back door. The deadbolt has stopped working. It clicks open by itself now when the wind blows from the east. When the deadbolt has stopped working, it clicks open by itself now when the wind blows from the east. I wonder if he'll knock, or if the stones will simply roll aside to make a path. Either way, I know this much is true. The desert always settles its debts. And we've been borrowing time for far too long. The last stone appeared on my pillow this morning, smooth as polished bone, still radiating the day's heat, though dawn had barely broken. As I held it, the walls exhaled a breath of dry wind, carrying the scent of creosote and distant campfires. I understand now. The desert was never haunting us. It was calling us home. Tonight, when the clocks freeze at 3:17, I won't wake my family. I'll simply open the back door and follow the trail of stones glowing faintly in the moonlight. They lead us past the edge of town, where the pavement crumbles into wilderness, where the shadow man waits, his form no longer blurred, but terribly, beautifully clear. The jar sits empty on the dresser. The cracks in the walls have stilled. Even the dog seems at peace, his tail wagging slowly as he watches me pack our old camping gear. We're going back to where it began. After all this time, I finally remember we were never the ones being watched. We were the ones who forgot to listen. The stones have gone quiet now. They know we're coming.